Welcome back to today's Explainer. If you're anywhere near the AI space right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say the ground is shifting right under our keyboards. As an AI engineer myself, I spend my days staring at deployment pipelines, architecture diagrams, and compute budgets. And let me tell you, the sheer volume of structural changes hitting our industry right now, it's absolutely staggering. We aren't just dealing with a few new model weights or fun library updates anymore. We are literally watching the entire foundation of our tech stack get rewired in real time. Today, we're going to break down exactly how 12 massive industry updates are colliding. But more importantly, we'll look at how they directly impact the way you and I build, scale, and pay for the applications we're deploying.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think of this agenda as our sprint planning session to organize today's chaotic news dump. We're starting at the bare metal with the compute foundation, then we'll move up the stack to the API price wars, evaluate the changing economics of software, zoom out to geopolitics and legal drama, and finally look at a wild socioeconomic side effect in the domain name boom.
Let's kick off with Section 1, the Compute Foundation. Subtitle here is Managing Hardware Bottlenecks. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive bottleneck we're all currently facing as builders. On one hand, you've got Microsoft's actively limiting GPU access. They're being forced to prioritize internal use in their biggest enterprise customers, with shortages actually projected into 2026. I mean, if you're a mid-sized startup relying on Azure for heavy training workloads, that is a serious blocker. Meanwhile, Meta is taking a totally different approach to fuel their ambition of becoming an absolute AI powerhouse. They just struck a multi-year deal worth billions to use Amazon's Graviton chips. They're aggressively spending on alternative silicon and cloud storage just to secure their capacity. As engineers, this tells us we absolutely have to design our systems to be hardware agnostic and incredibly efficient, because securing raw compute, it's basically a multi-billion-dollar chess game right now.
Moving right along, that brings us up a layer to Section 2, API Price Wars, the battle for the stack.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this single number completely changes our unit economics. 700. DeepSeek just slashed their prices by 2.5 times. That makes their API a staggering 700 times cheaper than GPT-5.5 Pro. Just let that sink in for a second. When you're calculating your inference costs at scale, a 700x cost reduction isn't just a nice little optimization, right? It's a totally new business model. It means features that were entirely cost-prohibitive to deploy last week are suddenly completely viable. The model providers are in an absolute race to the bottom on price, and honestly, that is the best possible news for us at the application layer.
But it's not just about the price tag, you know? It's about access and the strategic alliances forming right now that will define our infrastructure. OpenAI has formed a confirmed strategic partnership with AWS Bedrock. That announcement proves something absolutely critical. In the 2026 AI economy, distribution is vastly more valuable than brand loyalty. Enterprise builders want models where their data already lives. But the board isn't settled yet. Elon Musk's xAI has been holding talks with Mistral about teaming up. If they unite, we could see a powerful new infrastructure alliance specifically designed to take on the dominance of OpenAI and Anthropic. For us, the takeaway is clear. Do not hard-code your dependencies to just one provider.
So we have compute constraints on one end and cheap APIs on the other. How does that impact the business logic layer? Welcome to Section 3, the changing economics, focusing on SaaS pricing shifts.
For years, the industry standard has been that predictable, flat, per-user subscription fee. You know, the classic seat-based pricing model. Well, that era is ending. AI usage is forcing a massive pivot. Out of 500 top software companies tracked, 79 have already shifted their pricing models, and that includes heavyweights like HubSpot, Adobe, and Salesforce. That number is more than double what we saw back in 2024. By the end of 2025, these companies are going to charge based on how much AI you are actually using within their platforms. So if you're managing a tech stack, your SaaS overhead is about to become highly, highly variable. Which leads us directly to this stark reality check. AI now costs some companies more than employees' salaries. Wow, that is a massive paradigm shift. The intelligence layer of our tech stack is now literally outpricing human capital on the balance sheet. When API calls and automated agents become your biggest line item, optimizing your code isn't just about speed anymore, it's about survival. Every inefficient loop or bloated prompt is burning cash faster than a physical payroll.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, Geopolitics and Legal Drama, Macro Blockers.
Because our code doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It operates within a highly complex global supply chain, and that creates an absolute logistical nightmare. Take a look at this. First, Meta closes a $2 billion acquisition of the AI agent startup Manus. The money transfers, operations move, and staff are successfully integrated in Singapore. Then, China's National Development and Reform Commission steps in and orders Meta to unwind the deal, citing foreign ownership and national security concerns over advanced AI assets. Reversing a closed tech acquisition of this scale is incredibly rare and unbelievably complicated. And the ripple effect is immediate. The Chinese government is now planning to restrict their tech firms from receiving U.S. funding without prior approval. This is a massive macro blocker. It cools the startup market, slows down Meta's race against OpenAI, and it shows us that national borders are becoming hard firewalls in AI development.
On the domestic front, there's some legal housekeeping clearing up the board. The federal judge overseeing Elon Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI officially granted Musk's request to dismiss his fraud claims against the ChatGPT maker. Concurrently, Sam Altman has officially published OpenAI's principles. While this clears up some immediate courtroom drama, it really just underscores how intensely scrutinized the leaders of our industry are. The foundations we're building on are constantly under a legal microscope.
All right, Section 5, the domain name boom, the .ai gold rush. So the crucial point is that 50% slice right there. That represents the national budget of Anguilla, a small Caribbean island. Back in the 1990s, they were assigned the .ai domain extension. For decades, it basically meant nothing. Then, ChatGPT triggered an absolute wave of AI startups. Founders like us needed a badge to show we were building modern tech, so we flooded the zone, pushing registrations from around 60,000 to over 1 million. Every time an engineer registers a new .ai project, a cut goes to Anguilla. It's become so massive that this domain revenue now funds nearly half of the island's entire national budget. It's paying for tax cuts, healthcare, and literally a brand new airport. It's just a wild reminder of how much raw capital is flowing out of our development ecosystem into the real world.
Which leaves us with this final, rather provocative question. With hardware compute heavily constrained by tech giants and nations actively building geopolitical walled gardens around AI assets, who really controls the future of what we build? As engineers, we love to think that the best code wins. But as we've seen today, our stack is heavily influenced by multi-billion-dollar chip deals, sudden government interventions, and volatile API price wars. Understanding this deployment chaos isn't just theory, it's how we ensure the apps we build today can actually survive tomorrow. Keep optimizing, keep building, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.